Well, welcome to the CISO Sandbox. We have Ira Winkler with us today, and we are going to be discussing a article that was published in the Wall Street Journal that was based on some original research that was then reported on by the author of that research in the Wall Street Journal. And Ira, first of all, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. I get rather fired up about stupid things, and God, is this one stupid?
Well, I think that pretty much sets the tone for the conversation today. So this was an academic study performed by someone who is a reputable academic and worked for a reputable academic institution. However, let's talk about this, Ira. The conclusion that this author came to at the end of the article reads like this: companies should consider the broader impacts of mock phishing campaigns before deciding whether and when to use them. While there is no surefire way to teach employees how to detect and stop phishing, there are alternative approaches that don't lead to distrust and resentment. And again, the title of this article was "Why Companies Shouldn't Try to Catch Employees with Fake Phishing Emails." Subtitle: They can create stress and distrust among employees without significantly improving an organization's defenses. Ira Winkler, you have literally written the book on security awareness, most recently with Security Awareness for Dummies. You've been doing this for a long time, since before security awareness was even a term that people were understanding of.
Mm-hmm.
What did you have a problem with this article and the study it was based on? Was it the methodology? Was it the conclusion?
So there was pretty much, everything was wrong with this. It was the methodology, it was the conclusion, it was how it was presented, in the Wall Street Journal itself, which frankly I would blame the editors for. Because let's start with the why I have a problem with this. Opinions are like noses. That's the polite version. Everybody has one. And here you have an academic with an opinion. The opinion in this case, and here's my fundamental problem first with the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal presented this opinion like a news story, like it is factual. There was no disclaimer that this person does not do security awareness programs. He has no professional experience in the industry or whatever else, but the guy did a study, and here's his conclusions having no actual practitioner background in the field. And that's number one, because the problem with the Wall Street Journal is it's a respected publication. They typically have standards. And so that's number one. And then also, when you get back down to it, let's go through the layers of this. From an academic perspective, and I'm pursuing my own PhD now for 30 years. It's been a while, I admit this. And, I actually have a patent based on it. I'm almost finished, but any academic will tell you, number one, every study includes a discussion of limitations. Every study includes peer review. Every study includes a variety of different things. There was nothing in this article in the Wall Street Journal that had, here's my limitations of what I'm presenting and why. It basically is, I had these kind of random findings, and based on these random findings, which they are, here's what I'm going to pontificate on, because I was given a forum by the Wall Street Journal for whatever reason. To this day, I don't know why. And so therefore, you have something that is there without, frankly, anything to contradict it. And that's a fundamental failing of an academic, if you don't have anything to contradict it. If you don't have anything to say, well, look, and for example, the person left out critical technologies from an academic perspective. For example, they mention how, fundamentally, he says, just get rid of phishing simulations. That's not an option for almost every company I know, because auditors who check on a variety of different compliance standards tend to want to see phishing simulations. So first, for this article to even have any traction or legitimacy whatsoever, they have to discuss, okay, let's get auditors to change how they do audits, which good luck with that. That's
Great
number
point.
one. And then on the academics, and then on the study design itself, apparently from what I could tell, because they didn't do a good job discussing it, he sent a phishing simulation to a company that had 2,000 people, sent 4 different phishing messages, and based on his one phishing assessment of using 4 different lures, as we would call them in the profession, he made these conclusions. Oh, some lures people don't react to. Like, sorry, I'm trying not to curse, but no stuff, Sherlock. You know, if you run a security awareness program, run phishing simulations over time, you know which simulations will work, which simulations won't work. He also had this naivety. Well, if it's more advanced or if it's a more sophisticated phishing message, then people will click more frequently. Like, again, no stuff, Sherlock. And to that extent, when we think about that, wait a second, tools like Hoxhunt, and there are others, but Hoxhunt has a great tool that goes ahead and tailors phishing lures to different people as they go on. So it makes it appropriate because, yes, phishing simulations are an insult. If you send the same phishing lure to a janitor, not disparaging janitors, that you would to the cybersecurity program manager, you're going to get different sophistication levels. And in order to have good proper training, the training has to be tailored to the people. And he doesn't address this. He also didn't address a variety of other issues like, okay, so for example, he said people were offended by this. Well, a good security awareness program makes people proactively aware of what the threat is, and tells them, for example, that you are going to be subjected to phishing simulations to keep you aware. And there's a variety of other sciences he makes no mention of from an academic perspective, like the forgetting curve, that if you give somebody information let's see if I don't know the angle it's going to be, but over time, people forget the information if they don't apply the information. So phishing simulations allow for this. There's also from safety science the principle of complacency, that if you have an environment and you tell people information and nothing happens, people are going to become complacent and not take basic security precautions. And, they're going to say, well, I mean, frankly, in a large company, most large companies have really good secure email gateways that filter out 99.99% of actual phishing messages. The actual employee might never get a phishing message in real life. And what happens is if you don't have these simulations, people will become complacent and maybe they'll fall for it on their personal accounts, which are just as dangerous given the proliferation of people using cell phones for both personal and business email accounts and so on. So there's a variety of other sciences from an academic perspective this person made no mention of. So here we are from a professional perspective. There's a whole ignorance of, frankly, requirements of business on top of the reality of business. And then to the point, anecdotally, and anecdotes are not a good academic proof in any way, shape, or form. Gee, people are upset. I don't care. At the end of this is going to sound harsh, but fundamentally, yes, you do want to have good relations with people. But at the same time, the question from an academic perspective is it effective? And the guy is basically saying, well, studies show it's not effective. What studies? I can show you studies that it is effective. Just because something doesn't work right, it's not impugning the necessary tool. It's impugning how it runs, because I will give him 100% agreement that there are many, if not most, security awareness programs are horribly designed. Many, if not most, phishing simulations are horribly designed. And yes, that's true. That doesn't, however, mean you stop it because it's horribly designed. Individually, you figure out how to do it better. And that's what the academic should be doing, because, he just had a vague statement that you read, like, other means? What other means? I have yet to see other means that are effective because, I will agree that I once, I gave a lot of phishing simulations over my career. And there was one time where I was designing an awareness program, and I was talking to the woman who was in charge of human resources for a global, well, it was a private company, so it wouldn't be like a global 2000 type of thing, but it would have been in the global 500 easily if it was a public company. And this woman was in charge of HR, and she was mentioning, oh, yeah, I don't like the awareness program. I'm like, why? She's like, well, I was calling it a phishing simulation. I felt like I was tricked. I'm like, okay. She's like, I was more aware of it, and I did check phishing messages more carefully going forward, but I don't like being tricked. And I'm like sitting there thinking, you're the effing head of HR. If you fell for a real message, your company would be the subject of multi-billion-dollar lawsuit given the number of employees.
Yeah.
The fact people need to be diligent, again, sorry, I'm on my soapbox here, but generally you don't hear about, for example, medical practitioners having to be certified in new tools and things like that, that if they can't be certified on the tools, they can't use them. You don't hear about truck drivers. Most companies have trucks and cars. If people have to get their, like truck drivers have to be certified or retested. You don't hear, oh, we don't want to cause the truck driver stress. That would be horrible. You don't hear about food service workers. Oh my God, I have to clean this. They're going to make sure I clean the kitchen well. It's like, gee, that's stressful to me. Again, think about it this way. I hate the concept of a loss of life, but the amount of damage an unsafe truck driver could do to a company is infinitesimal compared to what would happen if an HR manager was caught by a phishing message. When you
really
think
well
about
put.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, let's not cause people stress. And what's better? The guy has no clue what's better. A good academic article would have said, well, here's a bunch of research on what is better. He's not going to find anything that's statistically consistently better. So anyway, I will let you ask another question. I think we just went through the whole interview.
Yeah, as Al Pacino once said, I'm just getting warmed up. Yeah. No, that you did cover a lot of ground there, and there are a lot of places to go a little deeper in. And one of the places there is the idea of causing stress to employees and how people can feel turned off. And when I first saw the article and I saw the title of it, and I shared it on LinkedIn, which is how you and I connected about this, I agreed with it in principle at first, with a caveat and with the corollary that was not actually printed, is that traditional negative consequence-based crappy security awareness does not work. And that's why there is innovation. That's why there are new approaches to this thing where it's actually not just consequence-based. It's not just making people feel awful about themselves. It actually turns it around and it rewards people. And not all stuff has to be so static. There are ways when you take different kinds of technologies, machine learning models, you can actually adjust the level of challenge to fit the actual user skill level. And this exists. It's out there. And so what this kind of seemed like is beating a dead horse, that like old school security awareness training doesn't work. But then when you weighed in on this, I thought that we had to have this conversation because there were some just kind of larger problems with this that I also saw. So I guess I would turn it back to you now. What's the difference between a good and a bad security awareness and behavior change program?
So at the end of the day, this is going to sound redundant or obvious, but is it effective? And I tell the story. When I was in Marine Officer Candidate School, I remember we were just issued our rifles, and we were in the barracks practicing taking them apart, putting them back together, and so on. And then all of a sudden, I heard the, sergeant instructor walk in and basically say, "You lose your weapons, you will do jail." And he just walked out. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And now years later, I'm sitting there thinking it was the best security awareness lesson I ever had. Because here he was like, okay, what was it? You had those M16s. If you lose them, you're in trouble. And my joke was, what is doing jail? But, that was his language. But, he's like, you lose your weapons, you will do jail. Everybody there was a guy who literally, we were on a forced march. I'm sorry, it's called a conditioning hike legally, but we were on a conditioning hike. And one guy, he broke his leg. Like literally, they cut his trousers and you could see the bone sticking out. And he's like, and they're like taking him into the ambulance. He's like, give me my weapon, give me my weapon. And the sergeant instructor is like, just cursing him, get the hell in that ambulance. We'll take care of your rifle. And it was just like, that's how effective that was as a lesson. Now,
Right.
The thing was, does it have to be complicated? Frankly, simple is better. You do need to go ahead and perhaps tell why. I'm kind of like, the best awareness I've ever seen is everybody else doing everything right. So, for example, nobody just took their M16 and threw it on their bunk. They didn't just leave it there. When we got back, everybody lined up, put it in the weapons rack, put their own lock on it. Then it was locked again to be all be locked in place by the platoon sergeant. And everybody's rifle was locked. Why? Because everybody did the right thing. Culture itself is the best awareness lesson, because too many people say we want to create culture. I'm like, good luck with that. What you really want to do is you want to use the culture to your advantage to share doing things right. For example, if I walk into some companies, they give me a badge while I'm a consultant, I walk around, I'm going to take that badge off if I'm the only one wearing a badge. On the other hand, you go to, for example, I remember one of my clients was an airline, and I went to their headquarters and was walking around. I'm like, wow, you're all wearing badges. It's like, we're an airline. Everybody has to wear a badge on at the airport. I'm like, yeah, but you're in the headquarters miles away from the airport. What do you, it's like, it's just what we do. I was like, good job, because that was the company culture. And with phishing messages, I once asked somebody from an investment bank, because they were telling me how and this isn't the only organization, there are many, because they could be fired because they were telling me, yeah, God, I hate those, phishing simulations. I'm like, why? It's like, well, if I click on 3 of them, I can be fired. I'm like, wow. Really? Like, if you click on the first phishing message, you get the training. If you click on the second one, they call you into an office and tell you, this, and you could potentially, if you click on the third, you could be fired. I'm like, how do you feel about that? And it's like, well, at the end of the day, I understand, because what'll happen is if I actually click on a real phishing message, I could cause more loss and fines than I would make in my lifetime here. So that's another thing where they understand the importance of phishing and why it's done. And they realize that, yes. And do you want people to be afraid? You don't want people to be afraid to do their job. You want people to be diligent in the opening up of email messages. And if they are telling people and training people to be diligent in, for example, phishing simulations, and saying, well, they want in checking emails and saying, here's what to look for a phishing, it could be a good trigger to let people know, hey, I can be caught, again, taking away the complacency and so on. I've also, like I mentioned, I'm pursuing my own, doctorate degree, and I have a patent filed on using machine learning techniques to identify people's susceptibility to phishing. And one of the things in identifying phishing susceptibility or the lack thereof is if you have a person with high levels of self-discipline, if they click on a phishing message once, they are going to be so much more diligent in any follow-up phishing messages that they will never click on a second phishing message. So again, phishing simulations, when done properly, or even if not, can have an impact in reducing risk, because there's no such thing as any perfect countermeasure. Let's get that out of the way. Everybody says, oh, no matter what you do, some user's going to click on a link. I'm sitting there like, for a user to click on that link, how many technologies failed to get that message to the user? Why
Right.
aren't we saying that secure email gateway we have? We might as well get rid of that, because no matter what, the message is going to get through. Or why don't we get rid of all our anti-malware? Because no matter what, somebody's going to click on ransomware and the ransomware is going to load. And so, gee, let's get rid of everything because of this. No, any countermeasure will fail for a variety of reasons. But you have to look at it as having a multi-layers of security to prevent it. Because saying, oh, a user clicked on a phishing message, what a stupid user. I'm like, you're such a stupid security professional, because you don't realize that that message got all the way through your systems and
Yeah.
you didn't stop it, and you know what you're looking for. And then for the damage to be done, what type of idiot knows a user is going to click on a phishing message and doesn't do anything to prevent the damage resulting from the inevitability of somebody clicking on a phishing message? Again, you can't have perfect security, but you got to realize, for that user to have failed, you as the entire security department have failed if that user does damage.
And let's talk about risk, because you're talking about this article, this study. It took certain things into consideration, but I don't recall seeing anything about business risk and business imperative to address that risk. So first of all, what is the biggest security risk that companies are facing today?
Well, when you open up the Verizon data breach report, which just came out, last week, or maybe it was this week, I don't remember. But, 74% of all attacks somehow involve the human element. That's for Verizon. When you look at the homepage, that was a prominent study. 24% of those attacks involve phishing. And when you look at that, that's the most prominent thing. There are some, I have the window open somewhere on the system, but either way, it's not, the specific numbers are irrelevant. But when you look at it, yes, phishing is a primary attack vector for a lot of people. There's the
Right.
credential, the largest one seemed to be credential thefts, which you can get, credential dumps on the dark web, which could occur because of a user problem. It could occur because of a technical problem. But either way, phishing is a very significant concern based on the legitimacy of the data breach report itself, because that takes, unlike the study author in question, that takes actual data across millions of incidents and puts that all together to figure out, okay, where's everything coming from? And so, yes, we have to address phishing. I don't like the security awareness having myopic focus on phishing, but, it is a critical concern that does have to be addressed.
Right. Right. You can have a beautiful technical layer, and yet still it just takes that one email that gets through. And we'll see if those become even more sophisticated with more tactics, more organized cyber criminal groups, developing better templates based on better technologies. But this is something that we have been looking at in terms of comparing and also this is not a vendor-driven podcast. Don't worry, I won't go into some kind of a thing about what we've been doing here. But there is really a profound difference between like an old school kind of a bland, stale, dry content awareness program versus something that's more dynamic. Let's put it that way. And one of the biggest things that we've seen in general is something that is actually based on the behavior, the most like simple, easy, the BJ Fogg principle of B equals map, behavior equals motivation, access, prompt.
Yeah.
Something where you can, pardon, go, what's that?
Oh, no, I was just going to, you finished it, so I was going to finish it for you, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of slow on the uptake, trying to remember what everything. But it helps when you're trying to change behavior, which I think is really one of the two primary goals of an awareness program, change behavior and lower risk, is that you can actually focus on a behavior you want to change. And with an awareness program, it can be wonderful video content. There's some awareness providers out there, I really enjoy their video content, but it's been very hard to actually prove any kind of a relationship between really good video content and then a real big difference in how they'll actually behave when in a real life situation where they're attacked.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, no, the one that gets me, I hate vendors that talk about people love watching our videos. In other words, people love watching your videos instead of doing your job. or their job. And I'm like, what difference does it make? If I want to look at an awareness program, I want to see actual metrics of root behaviors that represent risk. That telling me people like your videos, I mean, funny videos, in many cases, like, there's one vendor I spoke to, they have videos, but they don't want funny because funny trivializes it. You don't see, for example, a funny video on sexual harassment. Why? Because it's a serious subject. And if you want to trivialize phishing, you want to trivialize letting somebody in because a clown walks in the door, good for you. The person's not going to look like a clown. The person is not going to be a funny person walking in. The person's going to be a delivery person. The person's going to be something innocuous that you're not going to think about. And funny might be entertaining, but funny doesn't display a sense of importance. I'm not saying you want your videos to be horrible. I'm not saying even humor, when done properly, can actually help with engagement and things, because there are intangibles. And, I realize this is a Hoxhunt, but Mimecast, I spoke to some people who use theirs and they try for funny videos in general. But people became, I don't want to say amored was the right word, but they liked the characters, the consistent flow of characters, and it generated engagement where during a Halloween party, people dressed as the characters in their videos.
That's amazing.
And that's kind of good. Whether or not it was effective, I don't know, but it shows that at least people had a good impression of the security program. People having fun is one thing, escape rooms. Some vendors sell that, but, I've seen people do that privately, so you can do your own. Escape rooms are fun, but that's an hour away from work at minimum for a lot of people. And then I'm not really sure what type of advantage that gives you. Like, oh, I had to learn that a passcode is easy to guess. Okay, you might have learned a couple things along the way, but the forgetting curve kicked in. I can't even remember the challenges. They're like, what'd you do after you went through the escape room? I'm like, I had to answer a question about viruses. I think I had to look behind someplace and see password written down.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. It's nice to be engaging if you have the time, but, what's the actual tangible value of that at the end to reducing risk? I'm not really sure. It's a good addition to a program. It's not the program itself if you don't want to take people away from their desk. That's a concern. The biggest problem I have is awareness programs don't consider what I call the hidden cost of awareness, which is actually the time to go through the awareness program.
Yeah.
Because if you have the mythical organization like the researcher did of 2,000 people, and I have that for a very specific reason, 2,000 people, basically you stop and consider that if you have a 10-minute video like those micro layerings, just estimate, even if the video's 3 minutes, they're going to stop their work, they're going to do something. So estimate 10 minutes to go through the video, the quiz, everything else. So that's 10 minutes. It's 12 times a year. So that's 120 minutes, which is 2 hours, which doesn't seem like a lot. Okay. Then that's 2 hours. Then you have 2,000 people spending 2 hours, which is 4,000 hours. 4,000 person hours essentially amounts to 2 full-time workers per year doing nothing but doing awareness training.
Right.
What does that tell you? That there's got to be a big return on investment that nobody is calculating in there.
Really
Anyway,
good point.
sorry.
Yeah, no, really good point. And also for everyone watching this now, just to make it clear, Ira does not work with or for Hoxhunt in any way, shape, or form. We've just sort of met over the years, just from, I've always admired your work, Ira, and I think you've had some interaction with Hoxhunt and think we do a decent job. But
well, to be full disclaimer, you guys, I did write a white paper for you guys a few years ago.
Oh, that's right. That's before I got here.
Yeah, and I still believe in that the model of actually using machine learning in the right way to specifically tailor phishing messages to the sophistication level of the user themselves is of great value.
Well, thank you for that. And I would follow that up with one little piece of research that I and we are going to be releasing here pretty soon. But we looked at our the data and trying to connect whether the behavior change training actually results in behavior change. And what we found is that we have about a 60% global reporting rate. So that can translate roughly to engagement rate. That alone is pretty impressive when you put that against most security awareness tools that are out there. But then the really cool thing was that 65% of active, so those reporters, the 65% of those reporters have actually reported at least one malicious or suspicious email in the previous year. So the proof is that there actually is some kind of a behavior that has been ingrained as a habit, and that people are able to recognize and detect an actual suspicious or malicious email in the wild. So we'll be publishing that pretty soon. That was, I thought, pretty neat that we're actually showing that there is an impact being made.
Yeah, no, that's important because one of my friends, Matt Canham, used to be he used to be at University of Central Florida as a professor there, and his specialty is repeat clickers and also looking at the behaviors of clicking and things like that. And he found people who report, and especially those people who report messages like three or more times, he calls them the centuries of the organization. Those people tend to be more secure and people who can actually function as champions and ambassadors for the program. So anyway, there's some, I'll just say, supporting research there as well, which of course the Wall Street Journal article did not mention, obviously.
Bringing it back to that. Well, I've taken a lot of your time here, Ira. Do you have any final thoughts on what this paper represents as far as where we're at as a cybersecurity community, as a world trying to get better at getting people get better at identifying and phishing attacks?
Well, here's the thing. When I start looking at this, I think, so first at the high level, what I'm discussing, what the article does not discuss is, in the first place, security awareness, the user problem is a systems issue. It's not, oh, stupid user clicked on a phishing message, what an idiot. The thing is, why did the message get to the user? How could we have done better in getting the user not to theoretically click, because they will always click, but then let's proactively mitigate damage. You have to look at the whole system, the whole chain of events, and that's my concept of human security engineering. I discuss the concept in my book, You Can Stop Stupid, as well, and a little bit in Security Awareness for Dummies, but definitely in You Can Stop Stupid, of a systems perspective in looking at any user attack does not occur in isolation. And taking lessons from safety science, if you say, okay, somebody fell from a ladder, then safety science says, okay, what was the job that caused the person to be up on the ladder? What might have caused the slippage from, what might have caused the fall? How could we have mitigated that? So on. Could we put like a harness on them or whatever the case may be? Things like that. Systems perspective, number one.
Right.
Regarding overall for security awareness, the thing is, we really need to look at actual behaviors. We don't need to look at gimmicks, studies, and things like that. My biggest problem with this is the Wall Street Journal did not report this as an opinion piece. It did not report this as errata or whatever you want to call it, just an interesting thing to put up on the internet because we need content and some academic begged us. It's basically, the unfortunate thing is, in this case, is that the Wall Street Journal is looked at and read by executives. And you're going to see a lot of people pull these articles up and think, oh, the Wall Street Journal had it. Oh, he makes an argument. The argument's completely specious, but an executive would not know that. That's the definition of specious. Apparently looks correct, but has underlying flaws. And people who don't know the science don't understand the underlying flaws, and they're going to start to ask questions. They're going to take away from a lot of security awareness programs what is their most effective tool out there. Because I hate to say it, or I don't know if I hate it to say it, but it's a fact that secure phishing simulations are the most active tool available to an awareness program. It's the most active metric used by most awareness programs. And to take that away from people is going to be damaging. And I want the awareness practitioners, and more important, the CISOs and security practitioners, to know the limitations of the study, which are not obvious, which is the biggest problem, which the author should have proactively addressed in any good research. But to that point, as a whole, are we doing better or worse? Like I said, most security awareness programs do suck. And we really need to do a better job on focusing what's important, but simultaneously not looking at, gee, a user makes a mistake, let's just give them more awareness. But let's look at this from a systems perspective. And that's what I'm promoting with human security engineering and my other efforts to that front.
Really well said. A lot of great points. I've learned a lot today, Ira, and going back to, also, I didn't learn about your own background in the service too. I hadn't realized that. That was kind of cool to hear about that. But also, when you were talking about some of the things about how, and I remember having kind of an aha moment reading "You Can Patch Stupid." And you referenced that in this talk today about how the fact that stupid is not just the end user, it's the people, it's the admins who are letting people get hit by these attacks when they know that stuff can be done to help them stay safe. And I think that's also a really critical point. And I really appreciate that you've been out there trying to keep people safe for this long. So kudos to you. So what are you up to? Yeah. So what are you, and anything you're up to today that you want to talk, let people know about?
So my day job, obviously people see the background. I'm the CISO for cybersecurity, which is focused on risk optimization. It's also focused on red teaming, pen testing, incident response, and other strategic services too. But really risk optimization is why I'm there, because it's really, really cool technology everybody should look at. And seriously, I didn't have to go to that company. I just love the product. So that's number one. Also working on the Human Security Engineering Consortia that hopefully will be pushed out shortly, getting security executives together to kind of address the problem strategically, not just with awareness. I'm not here to, my big thing has been it's a strategic issue. And then, of course, everybody should buy my awesome books, You Can't Stop Stupid, Security Awareness for Dummies. And also, I'm a contributing author to Cybersecurity All-in-One for Dummies as well. And if you want something more strategic, Advanced Persistent Security is also out there. Anyway, that's a lot.
Well, we'll link to it. Yeah, you bet. We'll get links to all that great work. Well, I appreciate it, Ira. Hope to see you again. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for putting some light onto a dark place here that was some shadows were cast by a certain piece that we're talking about here today. So very good.
I mean, much like we need our users to be aware of the depth of what the problem is or the intricacies in many ways, we need security awareness practitioners and CISOs to understand the depths and the intricacies of why that article is horrible. And I'll leave it at that.